Hello and welcome to another episode of Corgi Town USA. I am Candy. In my lap is Chuckles, our spokescorg.
I am Catherine. Outside the door to protect us from the noise is Digby and the honorary corgi, Indy.
Yes, and we also have Mortimer and Tito, the newest member. Booger's here in studio with us, avoiding the advances of Digby since he likes to harass her a little bit in her lady ways. If you're new here, hi, welcome. This is a show of corgi pandemonium and chaos. This is a show for corgi parents, pet lifestyle. Please, if you enjoy this episode, like and subscribe. We're here for you every week. We talk about grooming, training, traveling with your pet, also health of the breed. So we have a few episodes where we talk about specific health
issues,
health concerns. Yeah.
And we just had a little incident on just, bringing it up with Digby. We have no idea what happened. He just stopped eating. And for those, who follow and kind of know Digby a little bit, he's very food motivated. Fortunately, we our vet was able to do some blood tests and found some infection. Not that that's fortunate, but you find something, And fortunately, one of my oldest friends, my late husband's oldest friend, and he's a friend of mine, is a vet as well. And from the outside perspective, which I think is really good, from the outside perspective, he was able to make some suggestions, and now Digby is just as rambunctious and a pain in my rear end as ever before. So he's great.
He's back to his surly corgi ways.
That's right.
We're grateful for that.
And that's what the health of the breed is all about. And when we talk about the health of the breed and things to look out for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So today we're going to be talking about Megaesophagus.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard, we have a parent as a guest today, a corgi parent that has dealt with this and taken this journey. And he will tell you he's not an expert, but he has been dealing with this. So he's going to give us kind of what he learned in this process. Should we bring him on?
Absolutely.
Petunia. Hi, John. Welcome, John, Utley, and Petunia.
Yeah. Hi, Petunia.
Yes, that's my little Toonie.
Hi, Toonie.
Toonie.
Sweetie.
Well, if you are listening and not viewing, we do have a video portion on our YouTube page in which you can see Petunia. She is adorable.
Yes.
So, John, please explain to us, please introduce yourself and Petunia and tell us about how you got started with this, what you learned, how you got here.
Well, Petunia she's about 4 years old. Basically, she was at a vet in California, and I have a cousin who was in the vet supply business at the time, and she got word that Petunia was there, and they were going to possibly put her down because of the Megaesophagus.
Oh, no.
And she made some arrangements, and we managed to pick her up at about 6 months old. She was just finishing up with aspiration pneumonia at the time, so she was really tiny and skinny. But she's a big, chunky girl now.
She looks wonderful.
So how did you find out about her? You said your friend that worked at the vet had called you? You'd had corgis before? Or how did you arrive to...
I have never had corgis.
Okay.
We've had all kinds of dogs. We've had all kinds of health issues with them. Never had a corgi. This was my cousin.
Yeah.
His daughter worked in the vet supply business. She was working for a company that did some bio stuff for veterinarians.
Okay.
And she had pretty good feelers all over the country for dogs that needed rescued.
Aww.
And she came up, and it was the second dog we'd actually rescued from her, or rescued through her, I should say.
Right.
Okay. So by the time you got Petunia, she'd already had symptoms and had been diagnosed.
She was already diagnosed.
Okay.
They had done x-rays and a barium swallow and had diagnosed her definitely with congenital Megaesophagus.
Okay, so this is a genetic issue for her specifically. That is how it is diagnosed, with a barium swallow?
They can see normally what a lot of people happen is all of a sudden their dog starts having some sort of a problem, like regurgitation, and the vets can see the esophagus in a regular X-ray.
Okay.
But the only definitive way to tell is with a barium swallow, because you have to be able to visualize the swallowing to see if there's any muscle tone or motility left in the esophagus. Basically, what ME is that the esophagus is just flaccid and it doesn't, like when you swallow something, muscles push it all the way down to your stomach. With megaesophagus, it doesn't do that. There's no muscle tone.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, kind of necessary.
Yeah, very necessary.
Yeah.
Wow, what a road there with her, poor thing. So we know that this is genetic with Petunia. Are there other causes of this? And I think there are other types you had mentioned before to us off camera.
Well, there's acquired. Petunia's congenital. She probably had it since birth. He was diagnosed at about 6 months old.
Right.
There's also acquired. I've dealt with a couple of people here in Arizona that had dogs with acquired megaesophagus, where it just appears at some point. There's different reasons for that to happen. Sometimes there's no reason. It's idiopathic. You just don't know why it came on, but it does. But there's also a condition that can lead to megaesophagus called persistent right aortic arch disorder, where the esophagus passes past the heart, and there's a connection between the aorta, the ascending and descending aorta, that chokes off the esophagus. That is one of the things, and that requires a pretty radical operation. It's an open heart procedure.
Yeah.
But they can usually resolve it if, in a lot of cases, if that's the cause.
So that type is like an arrangement problem. There's a piece there arranged that needs to be moved. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's not, it wasn't a genetic issue of any sort. A lot of times, I mean, another disorder that can cause megaesophagus or comes with it, it seems like, is myasthenia gravis. For some reason, it seems to attack the esophagus and then again lose the muscle tone. Esophagus becomes basically just wide open and no muscle tone, so swallowing becomes something that is impossible, and you have to use gravity to get the food into the dog's stomach or whatever. It can happen to a human, but it's mainly, any mammal potentially could get megaesophagus or have megaesophagus.
Okay, so I'm hearing that there's genetic causes, there's the problem with the aorta that can happen, and then also sounds like autoimmune acquired, if it's mesenteria gravis or however you pronounce that. I don't want to say it again because I'll butcher it. But
acquired can be, people will take the dog in for surgery. Say you get a knee fixed, and after the surgery, for whatever reason, the mega comes on. And they don't know why, it just happens. So there are acquired reasons that, and I'm not a medical expert, but there's acquired reasons that all of a sudden it just pops up.
That's crazy. That's it.
But that actually kind of makes sense to me based on what I know about degenerative myelopathy. Because when you have a DM dog, and this is pure conjecture on my part, so those listening, feel free to correct me in the comments if you know more than I do. But with degenerative myelopathy, we try to avoid any kind of surgery at all, because using the anesthesia can make the DM so much worse. You might be managing and then they come out, and it's a common enough problem that we all kind of know, okay, well, we can't do any more teeth cleanings or anything while we've started this progress. So that actually kind of makes sense to me. And I wonder if there's probably a correlation there.
There might be, because, again, I remember with my mother, she had a real problem with anesthesia. Exactly, Petunia. Anesthesia is because it deadens all the nerves, and what happened with her in her later years was that recovery, reawakening the nerves, and therefore the musculature took so much longer.
Oh man.
So
well, and that's kind of what I mean, and not so much correlation with DM, but we just know that DM specifically, that anesthesia, putting them under surgery can make it worse. So I wonder if there's a correlation between maybe the anesthesia or the body trauma of surgery and it kind of spearheading, making any kind of chronic problem worse.
One of the things with a ME dog, with the Megaesophagus dog, pretty much anesthesia is almost off the table, because the fact they can't swallow, they have all that mucus and stuff that builds up during surgery, and they can literally asphyxiate themselves.
Oh goodness,
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh, my goodness. Well, what are there medications available for this condition?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. The main medication that's used is sildenafil.
Oh,
most people
Viagra.
know that as Viagra.
That's Viagra.
I was like, wait, that name, what, you're going through your brain.
Hey, it makes sense. It keeps things nice and stiff.
But actually, it's the opposite.
Oh,
in the dog, what it does, at the top of the stomach, you have a valve. It's a one-way valve.
Yep.
The LES, the lower esophageal sphincter.
Yep.
And it opens and closes to allow food in, but won't allow food out. With the sildenafil, it actually relaxes that and allows the food to flow in easier.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Downside to that is most Megaesophagus dogs also suffer from esophageal reflux, GERD, if you will.
Yep.
Yep.
Just like a human would get, and you have to give them some sort of an antacid. Petunia, for instance, is on sildenafil and famotidine, Pepsid.
Okay.
And that's kind of a lifelong thing. It's one of those deals that it maintains, and it allows her to have
quality.
Well, I mean, they told us she wouldn't live 2 years and she would always be scrawny.
Oh.
The last vet check, we were told she's 3 pounds overweight.
Oh,
that's great for her, though.
Yes, that's
wonderful. Yeah. Oh wow, good job.
Good job.
So, how often do you have to administer the famotidine and the?
About 20 minutes before every meal.
Okay.
She eats twice a day. Some dogs, depending on the degree of how bad their ME is, they may have to eat 10 meals a day, small meals. But with her, she's kind of in the moderate range.
Okay.
And she does have a little bit of motility at the very beginning of her esophagus. So she eats twice a day, and we give her the medications about 15 to 20 minutes prior to her eating.
Okay.
Wow. Well, good job there. I'm glad she
coats the stomach and keeps that sphincter open. And yeah, I understand.
Well, then you have to have them upright for a period of time after a meal. For instance, it's about 20 minutes. She's got to be in an upright position to allow the food to flow down.
And so this is where the Bailey chair comes in, right?
A Bailey chair can be used for that. Petunia is a baby. She likes to be held. So we just hold her for 20 minutes after a meal, or 10 to 12 minutes after she takes a drink of water. Her water has to be thickened. You can't give them just water. Water is a nemesis for most Megaesophagus dogs. It will cause problems. We thicken her water with it's a product called Thicket. It's just like modified cornstarch.
Okay.
And her water's like the thickness of maple syrup type thing. And she can drink that, and that goes down, and we don't have an issue with that.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad there's management there, because I would imagine dehydration would be a risk.
Especially
dehydration is a definite issue with a lot of Megaesophagus dogs.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness. What a condition.
Yeah,
So,
it's
so tell
ugly.
us, yeah. So tell us about the Bailey chair then, because that's what that's for, correct? Is to keep them
The
upright.
Bailey chair is basically there's a lot of different ways that they're made, but basically a Bailey chair is just a chair. They call it a chair. It's not really a chair. It's like a box. And this box is, you can stand your dog up in the box, and there's a little shelf where they can eat so that they're eating in an upright position and the food's flowing down. And they have to stay in that little box again for 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the dog.
Okay.
It's funny because Megaesophagus is very common in, or more common, I guess, in Great Danes and like German Shepherds, some of the larger breeds. And I can't imagine having a 140-pound dog trying to put it in a Bailey chair.
Yeah.
Wow.
No
Yes.
joke. Yeah.
And you can't hold a dog like that. I mean,
No, it would be very difficult.
So yeah.
Let me hold down my 180-pound German Shepherd for 30
Exactly.
minutes. Goodness gracious. Yeah. Can you imagine? Wow. Interesting. And that's, I know
It's
that
hard enough to wrestle with a 27-pound Corgi.
well, they're so spicy,
They are very spicy.
But I'm glad that you told us about this. And I know that it is a risk in corgis, maybe not as common, but because I knew about it, I'd heard about it. And I said, oh yeah, I heard about Megaesophagus. And I knew it sort of about the Bailey chair.
Okay.
And I know we have some members of the corgi community that do utilize the Bailey chair. But for anyone listening that maybe is dealing with this new diagnosis or maybe wondering if maybe their dog could have this based on what you've described to us here, John, what you've dealt with, what resources are available for a parent potentially facing this?
I think the main thing, there's a group called the Upright Canine Brigade. They have a Facebook page. They have a website. They're a nonprofit.
Okay.
The people that run that work with, I believe it's the University of Missouri, is doing the main research on Mega.
Okay.
And they deal with them pretty closely. Their webpage and their Facebook site has just tons and tons of information. Papers from different different things that have been done. I mean, from what I know, 20 years ago, this was considered just a flat death sentence for a dog.
I can see that.
It has become extremely manageable since they really started doing a lot more studying on it. Like I say, a lot of vets, you walk into your vet, the average vet here in town may or may not have any knowledge or any real experience. So then they immediately go to that old text that they probably were taught when they were in school, that this dog's just not going to live. And they don't understand a lot of I had to have my dog, I had to tell the vet what meds I wanted and how I wanted to treat them. And then finally we started going to Midwestern University here in North Phoenix, and there was an internal doctor there, an internalist that was pretty familiar with it, and she was able to really help us a lot with a lot of the control issues that we've had. It's just one of those things. It's hard to find somebody that really understands it.
Not as studied. Yeah. I mean, and that's similar with DM as well. Most vets.
Exactly.
They'll say, well, they'll even mention the scary E word, euthanasia, if that's what it is, because they're like, oh, they're just going to go downhill and there's nothing you do. And that's kind of what these groups are helpful for. And it's the same with DM is it's okay. You have experts, quote unquote experts. You have people who are studying this, and much like your university, they're going to be publishing peer-reviewed journals about how dogs get this, how they develop and how they manage, versus is it a death sentence? And then you have a community of support groups of here's what we've found after experiencing this and dealing with this and how we manage it. And there's so much power in that community. Like, it might be not specifically be medical advice. However, If they're working with a professional, there's someone out there that happens to have both, right?
Have both. And I think the flip side of it is, as the parent, as the one who deals with it every single day, and you have the medical advice, and now you know that Viagra helps the esophagus.
Yeah.
Yay. and studies through veterinarians do a lot for studies through humans, and that's just a fact.
Sure.
But you find out through the professionals what works, why it works. They know the chemical makeup of all of the pharmaceuticals, so they understand, well, even though it doesn't seem like, yes, this is going to work. Okay, great. And then these support groups and these nonprofits, please support them. Please go to these support groups, because they're the ones who live day to day. They're the ones, like John, you may know, for example, like, and I'm just throwing this out there, please, this is not advice. Well, if you put the dog's left paw up a little bit higher than the right paw, it's a lot easier than if you put the right paw up a little bit higher than the left paw.
You're talking about hacks and tips and tricks, life
all
hacks.
of that stuff, all of that stuff. And that's what we learn as parents day to day. So John, thank you so much for taking us on this journey with you.
And taking such good care of Petunia.
Love it.
Well, I wouldn't. It's funny probably because of the disorder. I think you bond to a dog like this much stronger than you do to just, if you have a dog that's healthy and you love them and you have fun with them. But when you got to be careful and you got to watch every step with the dog, and you got to be so involved in their care on a daily basis, and you got to be so acute to everything that happens.
Right.
You become a lot tighter bond.
Yes.
That's the caretaker bond. We talked about that in our DM episode.
Yes, we did.
That you do have a specific bond with your DM dog. And I imagine this is very similar. It's your caretaker bond. You're taking care of an animal with a chronic condition, or a condition that could go south very quickly if you don't pay attention to those nuances. And it's a specific type of bond. Yeah. Caretaker bond. Absolutely. So go ahead.
Petunia has had aspiration pneumonia several times, and that's almost impossible to not deal with that with an ME dog. It's going to happen.
Right.
And I know what that is, but will you please tell our listener viewer what that is specifically, the aspiration pneumonia?
Basically, because their swallowing doesn't work, they can aspirate food particles, water, anything, stomach acid, into their lungs. And once that gets in there, it can happen to any dog, but it's more prevalent because they don't have any real control.
Right.
Yes.
Can't correct quickly. Yeah.
Right. And once they get something in their lung, it's not like just curing regular viral pneumonia or bacterial pneumonia. You've actually got to deal with a foreign body that's in the lung, and it takes a lot of medication, and it can take 4, 6, 8 weeks of very, very strong antibiotics to finally knock it out of them.
Right, because you're not just dealing with, I love using metaphors, you're not just dealing with a green pool. You're dealing with something that won't get out.
Interloper.
Interloper. You can't drain the pool.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to drain the pool. So you're dealing with the green, and you're dealing with trying to drain the pool, and it's two things at once. So once you get the bacteria under control, you still have the stuff in there. So
and this is a very serious condition. This is serious for any dog can have aspiration pneumonia. That's why we want to be careful not letting it run around too much between water and food and things like that, other than bloat. But aspiration pneumonia is also a concern, which is the other thing. They tell you not to, the dogs that love to play with the hose, love to bite the hose when the hose is going, make sure they have an empty stomach before you do that, and watch them very closely, because that puts them at risk at aspiration pneumonia with the water.
That's interesting.
And that puts them at higher risk. And so it's a very serious condition in any dog. But as far as I imagine, it's pretty obvious if you think you're dealing with that, right, John? Like there's a lot of coughing.
Well, yes and no. The problem with aspiration pneumonia can get away from you really, really fast.
I imagine.
With Petunia in particular, she'll go off. She won't eat. She'll start just picking at her food or not eating at all. That's a Corgi. Corgi not eating, something's wrong. That's a big red flag.
Exactly.
She becomes very lethargic. Again, a 4-year-old Corgi gets lethargic. That's a red flag.
Yeah.
But things like that, and if you allow it to get to the point where they're actually coughing and they've got a fever, it's going to be much harder to control. So you've got to kind of be watching them all the time and just being very proactive on that one.
Right. Just like you said, it's that special bond of
hawk watching.
Well, yeah. And it's with Digby, very recently. I don't, Digby does what Digby does. Digby is his own dude until he did not eat. And that just.
That's why you're in the ER. He wasn't eating. Yep. We know we have a problem here. Yeah. Yep. 100%.
He doesn't eat. We got a big problem.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Thankfully, Digby's better for anybody.
Digby's better. Yes. Thankfully, Petunia has you.
Yes.
So amazing.
But I do want to say, we don't want to keep you all night, but we know you have other things to get to and taking care of Petunia. But very quickly, talking about regurgitation versus vomiting, as yummy as this subject is to talk about, it's something to know. I mean, dogs vomit. It's part of having them. I have 4. There's always something coming out of a dog. It depends on what end, but there's always something coming.
Yeah.
And vomiting is common for dogs. It's common. There's lots of reasons why dogs vomit. But I wanted to talk about this because with Megaesophagus, you had told me that you definitely wanted our listeners to hear that there's a difference between regurgitation and vomiting and why we should talk about that.
Well, with Megaesophagus, because food can just pool up, water, whatever, can just pool up inside the esophagus. There's absolutely no effort. It's a regurgitation. It's just like they're just standing there. I've had her do it while I'm holding her. I'll pick her up after she eats. I'll be picking her up to hold her. And all of a sudden, it's just like blip and everything comes out. There's absolutely no effort. It's not that, when you see a dog sick, when they vomit, they retch and retch and retch. And then finally the stuff comes up. That's the problem with the aspiration pneumonia too with them, is because it's like I said, I've had her just be laying on the floor. She'll just be laying there, and all of a sudden, she'll just kind of look up a little bit, and just bloop, a big old pile of water, something will come up. It's that's one of the things that people miss. They get panicky when their dog vomits, and so the dog will regurgitate, and they go to the vet and they say, "My dog's vomiting." And the vet says, okay. So they start doing a bunch of stuff. If they're vomiting, it's one thing, because vomiting will usually kind of resolve itself in 24 hours or so. If it doesn't, you got a problem. Regurgitation, if it's happening continually, where they just all of a sudden it comes out without any real effort at all.
Right.
That's a key sign that you got an issue that you need to get looked at quick, because most dogs don't regurgitate, they vomit.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then but that also makes me think, goodness, if you have an ME dog,
right,
that if they do get an upset tummy, now you're dealing with that. I mean, the retching and the vomiting, I mean, that's like another layer of panic where if they're going to vomit, we have all these other layers of extra risks than a normal dog just vomiting, right?
Well, it is, because if they do vomit, because their esophagus isn't going to push it all the way up,
right,
you have to be very careful of that and make sure that they clear everything out. Fortunately, we haven't had much trouble with her with that. And I always have Serenia here. The minute, if she does vomit, if she actually does retch and vomit, she's on Serenia immediately. I don't take any chances. I wouldn't do that with my other dogs
Yeah.
because I don't, if they want to vomit, they need to get that out. With her, she goes on to Serenia and we stop it right there at that point.
Immediately. Yeah.
Try to get in front of that. Wow.
Okay. That just opened up my eyes because again, Digby, and it's so close to me. They put him on Serenia, and now I'm going through in my brain. Was he vomiting or was he regurgitating? And I think the first thing and the difference now, I will look at it. Indy vomited.
Mm-hmm.
Digby regurgitated.
No effort. Yeah.
And that's scary. Knowing these things.
Yeah. Well, we don't tell anybody this to scare you.
No.
This is for information. If you're dealing with some odd symptoms, maybe your vets haven't been able to diagnose, but these are things to check out. And I will get that link of the support groups from you, and I will drop that down in the description box of both the YouTube channel as well as our audio links. So anyone listening, viewing, and even if you just want to learn more, I mean, being dog enthusiasts, it's just good to know these things.
It's good to know these things. And no, I didn't say any of this to scare anybody. It's just, it's curious to me that, oh, there's a difference between vomiting and regurgitation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good.
You know, and you just like, oh, wait a minute. And all these little light bulbs go off in my brain going, okay, that's something else that I know. All I know for me is like my 20s growing up in New York City. And, I'll leave it at that. So.
Details are not necessary, Kat. Thank you.
But thank you, John. That was really informative.
One of the things, I mean, I think the main thing is that it is manageable. Yep. Don't get scared. Nope. If you get a bad diagnosis, try another vet. Yes. Make some phone calls. Make sure you find out all the information. Do some research online. But that's a big part of this is people get panicky when they get that diagnosis. And again, one of the ladies here in our local Corgi community, she took her poor little dog in, and this little guy was 2 years old. And they immediately did a major surgery on him, and it was unnecessary. Oh. And it was a long healing process, not to mention a big vet bill for her.
Yes.
And I happened to get involved with that dog and got involved with helping her to find the right resources. And he's doing really well now. Yay! And it was because that happened. Right. She panicked and allowed the vet to just go with the first thing he said. And that's not always a good instinct to have.
But I feel most of us would do that because we trust our, and we're grateful for you vets out there. Thank you so much for what you do.
Absolutely.
And sometimes people make mistakes, right? Even in practice. So I think we would all do that. Like, okay, you are the expert. I want my dog well. How do we do this? Yeah. So easy. Oh gosh, that's what an unfortunate thing for that to happen. But thank you so much. I'm glad she has you. And I want to qualify what you've said here about doing online research. That is a scary rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And when you start to do something online research on anything, you can also get a lot of false information. And that's one of the unfortunate things about having access to all this information via the internet age is that not all facts are facts. Some are conjecture. And I think what you said, John, join a support group, do your research there, ask those people. They've actually experienced it. They can tell you, oh, well, this has been published, but this is not our experience. Those kind of things, you will get so much useful knowledge in places like that.
That's very true.
You have to be discerning about the information that you look at.
Sure.
I guess I'm a geek in that sense. I will look at 350 different things, and if 290 of them are all the same, more than likely those are right. If you've got
deductive
30
reasoning
of them that are just out there and completely contrary to everything else, you got to be willing to, I guess, you've got to have that analytical brain that looks things closely.
Yep. Sure. Yes. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, John. We know that you have worked the whole shift and then came home and taken care of it. We're going to let you get back to your day, but thank you so much for sharing this information with us.
Thank you.
We hope that it was
I'm
helpful.
glad to. I hope it helps somebody. I mean, like I said, there's people out there that
Don't know what
I
they're dealing
I
with.
hate to see any dog. I mean, I'm a dog person. I had dogs all my life, and I hate to see any dog suffer needlessly because of
Misinformation.
Mhm.
yeah, or lack of
Lack of
information.
Yep.
And yes.
Absolutely.
So thank you for all of your information and your resources.
And thank you for taking care of little Toonie there. Give her some belly rubs from us here at Corgi Town, USA. You all have a great afternoon, evening.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, again, we hope this was helpful, and I will share the link to the support groups that John mentioned in the description box. Feel free to reach out to us if you have further questions and want to be connected. We're here to help that way, and we're here for you every week. All things Corgi and pet parent lifestyle. Candy here with Chuckles in my lap.
Catherine with Digby and Indy.
Yeah, hers are more nuts than mine.
Yeah,
Oh, did I say that out loud?
Yeah, you did.
But we also have Mortimer, Tito, and Booger. We will see you next week.
Bye.